Tim Legler, who joins us. I'm going to get your take on why last night might have been a more impressive win than some of these other ones the Sixers had. They beat Cleveland in Cleveland, who was a little shorthanded, but I thought the way they closed that game out was a little different than some of their other wins.
I think that's a great point. I think what it was to me was a very mature win. And as I was watching them, I was thinking about it. The whole game, and it was a wire-to-wire win for them, which is very impressive on the road anytime you do it in this league, particularly against a team with LeBron James on it. So that was impressive enough. But the way that they played throughout the game with poise, confidence, they just had a self-assuredness about them last night that I thought was really impressive. And it speaks to the fact that they're a team that is dominated by two young generational talents that are gaining more confidence literally right before our eyes every single night. And that is really a scary thought for the rest of the Eastern Conference, even this year, because I think they're a really dangerous team for whoever they get in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, right now you're starting. I agree. They look like a team that is maturing. They have nights where they in December, January, where maybe they took a team for granted. Maybe they overlooked somebody. You're young. They make mistakes. They can't close out the games. But you're seeing a team in March now that seemingly has learned from a lot of those mistakes. And when they're clicking, last night, a 13-2 run, it's a make-or-miss league. They're making them shots, and a lot of that comes with confidence, right?
Yeah, it does. It comes with confidence. I think it comes from learning from past mistakes. One of the things that this team struggled with earlier in the year, in addition to what you just mentioned, which was you could watch them play one of the bottom feeders and have a flat night. They've shed that, and then the other thing is they had a hard time at the beginning of the year finding an identity offensively at the end of the game because, Ben Simmons, as incredible as he is and as talented as he is, if the ball's in his hands the majority of the time, and now you get into the last 5 minutes of the game, and there are times when teams are going to try to force him out of the paint and force him to pull up and shoot a mid-range jumper to make an important free throw. They struggled with their identity in those situations because he didn't want to do those things, but he's got the ball all the time. That's a problem. They've started to figure it out. He is more confident now going to the rim in those situations. I don't think he's as worried about getting fouled as he was. Joel Embiid is going to get, obviously, his share of touches in important moments. And in general, they just look like a more confident team in important possessions in the fourth quarter, where earlier in the year, I think you could go back and probably identify 8 to 10 of those same kind of possessions that in games in which they lost that they would handle a lot differently now.
Legs, how come Ben Simmons isn't as aggressive night to night as we saw him last night? I thought last night he really was attacking the rim, showed off that little hook shot last night, was more comfortable getting into the paint, showed more of his skills. Are we going to see more of that? Why isn't he more like that on a regular basis?
Yeah, I hope we do. I think part of the reason, honestly, is because Cleveland, for as much as they have to work out on the offensive end, I think eventually they're going to be better than what they were earlier in the year. I just think they added young legs and they added more multi-dimensional offensive players, but they're going to take time to figure each other out. As much as we talk about that, we don't talk enough about the fact that they've still got some defensive issues. Like, they're not a team that's got great defensive core principles. And so as a result, I think Ben Simmons looked at a team in front of him and realized, I can get to the rim when I want to, because they don't have a big rim deterrent on the floor. They don't do a great job at the point of attack. And I think that's what Ben Simmons saw more than anything. And hopefully we do see more aggressive mindset out of him because, I like the fact that he's playing more out of the post than he was earlier in the year. Because when he puts his back on a guy, he's usually got a several inch minimum height advantage on guys. I love when he turns his back and starts getting down into that block area because you're forcing teams to make really difficult decisions. And when you have Embiid at the top of the key, you've got Redick, you've got Covington, Saric out on the floor together. I mean, that's some really, really high-level three-point shooting around him. I'd like to see him operate his offensive game a little bit more out of the post moving forward, and I think he's done it more over the last 10, 12 games.
Yeah, 6'10 over 6'4 is going to win every single time. We're talking with Tim Legler here. So talking about defense, Tim, how about the Sixers on the defensive end of the court? That could be a real difference maker in a playoff series, and Mike says all the time that he thinks Embiid should be a defensive player of the year candidate. Do you agree?
I think eventually he can get into that mix. I think it'd be hard for him this year to take that leap And just in general, some of that is perception. And guys have to be on teams that I feel like have a legitimate shot to go deep into the postseason. And I don't think the Sixers were viewed that way the first half of the year when a lot of these awards take hold in people's minds. So I don't think Joel Embiid's name is going to jump off anybody's lips when you talk about the Defensive Player of the Year award, but he might be setting the tone for next season to be a guy that could be an all-defensive team player or be in consideration for that award depending on team success. The ground that he can cover, the ground that Ben Simmons can cover, I actually did a touchscreen on that exact thing this morning on SportsCenter. It was a couple of plays last night that stood out to me when they were 35, 40 feet from the rim and switched on the guards and rode those guys all the way to the rim laterally. That's a really tough thing to do for guys that size. And they can do it, and it's game-changing because of the ground you cover. It leads to more contested shots, and statistics bear it out. If you can force contested shots, you got a great chance to win every night. So their defense can be really unique in that they've got two guys 6'10" and up that cover the kind of ground that they do.
Well, Legs, that's where, you'll have Simmons defending LeBron, then there's a screen, and then they switch, and Dario steps out. They have multiple guys, regardless of size, that seemingly can go out and guard. They're such a long team, but they're an athletic long team.
Yeah, they are. And I diagrammed a play from last night that stood out to me. There was a baseline out-of-bounds play. The Cavaliers had the ball. Kyle Korver was inbounding the ball. And LeBron James did what he has done his entire career, which was kind of stand there with his right forearm in the center of Ben Simmons' chest and then stick his left arm up and just telling Kyle Korver, hey, just throw it out here to this target and I'll catch it because I'm so strong. I'm just going to hold this guy off and catch him with one hand. Seen LeBron James do that, 100,000 times. Last night he tried that on Ben Simmons and Kyle Korver threw the ball, and LeBron could not hold Ben Simmons off because of his strength and then his reach. And he was able to reach up there with his right hand and steal the inbounds pass on a play that LeBron just totally took for granted he was going to be able to make because he overwhelms people physically. Even Robert Covington, he threw around last night. Whenever he wanted to go down in the post, go to the offensive rim, Covington would get on his back. He could not get around him because he just doesn't carry enough weight. And Ben Simmons was different in his matchup. So it's just fun to watch because you look at what these guys can do and the possibilities. I did another play where off of that steal, Ben Simmons starts heading up the floor on a break, and Joel Embiid is running stride for stride right next to him. And Ben Simmons is at top speed. And both of them, by the way, were running at a faster rate than LeBron James, who was trying to catch up to the play, and they were separating from LeBron. It was fascinating to watch. 6'10" and 7'1", running up the middle of the floor, full speed, and, poor Larry Nance is back there. He doesn't know what to do, and you end up with Ilyasova getting a layup off a great pass by Simmons at the end. But it's just the combination of those two players and the potential is limitless, and it's fascinating to watch because they are just so dominant with their talent. It really blows you away. And Embiid again last night, there were times he shows a touch that just defies logic for a guy his size and strength to be able to have that feathery of a touch on a turnaround jumper or a pull-up jumper or even a floater in the lane. It's just a really God-given talent that he's got that kind of depth perception and touch on a body that big.
Yeah, that turnaround last night late in the game had Chris Webber squealing as Embiid went back up the court. If we're going to talk a little defense, though, Tim, I do want to ask about perimeter defense because I saw an article written about the fact that the Sixers keep adding these three-point specialists and Bellinelli and Ersan Ilyasova, but does their perimeter defense suffer? You sit there and look at what Dwayne Wade did, Kelly Oubre did. You go back to Bobby Portis going off. Like some of the reserve guys come off and light up the Sixers D.
Well, look, there are very few players in the league that check off all those boxes. So, when you start talking about elite perimeter defenders that can also score, you start getting into guys that are playing in the All-Star game. So, it's hard to find that. I think right now they have enough of a balance with what Embiid and Simmons can do and Covington can do defensively. And then the other guys like Saric and Ilyasova and Redick, like those guys compete. And they might get beat once in a while with foot speed and have a harder time containing the ball at the point of attack. But they're smart team defensive players. They never miss a rotation. They know how to help and recover. And they're going to give you everything they have. And that's enough for now. T.J. McConnell, another guy, like really good on the ball defender, a little bit small, but he's going to scrap and fight. And then with the other guys that they have that I mentioned that bring that athletic component and versatility defensively, you got enough. I mean, yeah, you'd love to have a guy out there that can lock people up, but there's also a chance if you have a guy like that, he's not capable of making three-point shots. And so that's really important on this team too. So, look, you know, what we're talking about, it sounds like, is adding a guy like LeBron James, right? That can do both. So maybe that's where this is headed because, you know, they need a spacer to play with Embiid and Simmons. You just have to have a guy that can step out and make a shot. And a lot of those guys are not known to be great defensive players. So let's see what they're able to do moving forward and potentially in the offseason.
Well, right. I mean, and you played in the league, so you probably have talked to many guys throughout their free agent process when they were thinking about it. Does LeBron – do the Sixers have the resume and the look of a team that LeBron would be intrigued and interested in?
They do now, I think. This is an organization that you can just look up history. They just have had a hard time attracting big-time free agents. Like when those guys hit the market every summer – and the basketball world is held captive for 2 weeks while these guys make their tours around the league, it's a lot of the same cities they're stopping in, and Philadelphia is typically not one of them. And that's just been the history of the franchise. I think when people look at this team now, you see two guys that you clearly can envision going to the finals and winning an NBA title. So now you view the organization a little bit differently, not just that they've gotten better than what they were the last few years, which that was going to happen no matter who they had on the team. You actually have transcendent type talent that a guy like LeBron James or any other free agent, I think they're going to take a legitimate look and see if it makes sense. Whereas in the past, it just seems like Philly got brushed aside. It wasn't even part of the itinerary of what they were going to be doing for that 2 weeks while they were getting wooed by everybody. I think it could be different now that they have guys like this. And they also have great personalities. They're welcoming. They're guys that look like they're fun to play with. And you know, obviously also have immense talent, which is going to take some of the pressure off a guy like LeBron. So I don't think it's out of the question. I don't think it's certainly a lock like some people in Philly probably want to think. And I don't care what billboards get put up where. I think LeBron doesn't even know right now. I think he wants to let the season play out, let the chips fall where they may in the summer, and then evaluate everything. But I think Philly's in the game. I think they're in play for guys like him.
Here, when you look at the East, Philly right now is 6. Where do you put the ceiling for them? We've heard a lot about they got the easiest schedule. They look like a maturing team. They went on the road, but they did just lose 2 games in a row, both of them on the road. But when you look at Philly down the stretch, they come here. Where would you like to see this team kind of end up in this Eastern Conference?
Well, it's a great question because, I personally think any of the teams that are currently 5 through 8 in either conference that have to go on the road if the playoffs started tomorrow in the first round, I think the Sixers are the most dangerous team. And I don't care who they play. I don't care if it's Toronto, Boston, or Cleveland. It doesn't matter. They're not a team that anyone's going to want to see in the first round. And so the question is that where they finish? Or, they're 2.5 back of 3, I think. Can they get that high? Cleveland right now is having a difficult time finding their flow offensively with these new guys, and Kevin Love still has to get incorporated back. Now, it's a great bonus because he's 18-10 a night, but it's also a difficult transition with new pieces again. So who knows what Cleveland is able to figure out over the last 20 games? Do they slide back to the pack? Washington is playing incredible basketball since John Wall went out. John Wall's coming back in a few weeks. So who knows if they're going to be able to keep this up, and then will they be able to sustain it once he comes back? And then you've obviously got, Milwaukee in the mix, which looked like they figured everything out, and now they're stumbling again. So the answer is, I think 3 is possible. I don't think that's out of the question that Sixers get the 3 seed. If you're asking me to lay money on it, I'd say probably end up more likely in the 5-6 spot, and you get a team like Washington, Milwaukee, or Cleveland in the first round.
Tim Legler, everybody here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. The Sixers play tonight. We have that game for you on 97.3 ESPN. And then Sunday night, we'll have that game for you as well. We're getting close to turning those clocks back. We'll get a little extra sunlight down the short legs. A little barbecue season for you coming up.
You know that.
All right,
doesn't feel like barbecue weather today as I drive back in this horrible weather from Connecticut, but I can't wait to get some more for sure.
All right, man. Be safe on the drive. We'll talk soon.
Slow and steady, Legs. Slow and steady.
All right, guys.